Hi, this is Brian from B's Music Shop here at the 2023 Chicago Vintage and Custom Drum Show with a man I've known a very long time. Since I was saying with Greg, I think I've known him 22 years, probably about the same for you. And
I've been in the business for, 41 years, actually in the music business, and 36 years at Ludwig.
Wow, yeah, and you've always, for years, you were my, we would every time I needed something at Ludwig, they put me on the phone with somebody, but you were always the one. So
I was lucky that I got to work with the chief.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm the one that named him the chief.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was an idea I got from Miss Hathaway from the Beverly Hillbillies. She used to call Mr. Drysdale the chief, and so the chief, Bill Ludwig was the boss, and so I called him the chief.
That's incredible because, by the time I had met Bill in the late 90s, he would come here and they would play Hail to the Chief. And I that was the happiest I ever saw. I mean, he was a good-natured man and was always fun, but he lit up like a light bulb when you guys would play that song for him.
Right. He was especially good-natured after he retired and sold the company. And he became everybody's grandpa then.
Yes.
Only now I had the problems of corporate world, you know what I mean? But he was so thankful that we brought him back. We brought him into the fold to do stuff, to go to shows, to consult, to do training on timpani and this and that. It was a really great thing for him.
So that was you that kind of brought him back to Ludwig because he was kind of like being a brand ambassador at that point.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I asked the company if I could bring him back, and they said, well, if you can get him to work for X dollars a day, and it was a very low amount.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll ask him. And he said, Jimmy, I'd love to.
Yeah. I mean, I was just talking with B3, and it's like, we were talking like this family's just, that's who built the drum kit. It's the most famous name on drums, and that's just true. That's why they say that. So you started what year with Ludwig? And
I started in the music industry in 1978, working for Premier. And then I did 2 years for Slingerland, 81 to 83. And then in 1983, that's when I started at Ludwig. Okay. It was a really tough time, but I survived it. I always thought it was going to be like a 2-3 year job, and then they'd bring someone new in and stuff. And then as the years went by, all of a sudden, 10, then 20, then 30, then all the way up to 36.
What was the progression? Because you didn't start where you ended. How did it go?
I actually was named marketing manager fairly soon after I got there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
And then sort of added sales to that, so Ludwig Marketing and Sales. And they named me Director of Marketing later on, which really, it was the same job. They were just a different title.
Yeah.
And I did that up to, close to the end.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I've just always loved running into you. And you always have like the best stories about stuff. So what did you bring? What do you have here that did you?
A lot of the drums that I brought, I've sold already. However, what I have here is Ludwig in the 1999 was our 90th anniversary.
Yeah.
So we did a special top hat and cane snare drum that was wrapped by Jack Lawton.
Jack
Pennsylvania Drum Show.
Jack redid the bearing edges on my vintage drum kit. I love Jack. He did a fantastic job for me. He's a wonderful guy.
And so this was the first prototype that Jack actually wrapped to send it to me as this is an example of what I can do. So this is drum 0.
Wow.
So, so somebody out there has drum number 1 all the way through 90. Okay? But this is drum 0, and of course I bought that one.
That's cool.
But it's not serialized.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's another drum. It's just a standard Ludwig acrylite snare drum. However, we put the aluminum finish on the lugs, on the hoops, and on the snare strainer. Okay. Now the significance of this drum for me was whenever we would do a vintage drum show, our goal was to sell as many drums as possible.
Yeah.
So, and I think it was 2015 or 16. I sold every single drum off the booth except for one. So when I was driving home, I said, I can't go back and say I didn't sell every drum off the booth this year. So I bought it.
Nice.
And
that's
so
really sharp looking.
Here it is. And so, I'm selling it. And what I'm hoping is that someone that would buy this might buy it with the idea of getting it engraved. So I have John Christensen or John Aldridge as, this is a pristine drum that's never been played, that has a beautiful, finish to it, that someone could buy and get it engraved.
It's funny you should say that. I when we came into the Chicago show, there was that drum, that Black Beauty, and that was John Aldridge engraved that, and you were instrumental in getting us the shell.
Yeah.
And you kind of, I think I bought the hardware, you got the shell, and we got John to do it, and it took us 2 years, and we gave that to Rob for
That's
the
right.
20th anniversary. And
I was there. I watched that.
It was just one of those things where I saw it, and I kind of thought of you and thought of John, and remembered that was such a cool thing to see Rob still enjoying it 10 years later.
Yeah.
It's just really great.
And then I still own a Ludwig 100th anniversary snare drum from 2009 that John engraved. John Aldridge.
I think he was making those then because I think you were like, he's a little behind.
Yeah,
we need to not get more stuff on his plate. But this is a good idea. But he's
well, it's a lot of work.
It is.
But he had another job.
Yeah.
On the road with Ario.
Yeah.
As a drum tech. So they were busy.
Yeah, he's a busy dude and a master craftsman.
Very much so.
A great guy.
And he knows the history of everything. I mean, I may have worked for Ludwig, but that doesn't mean I know everything about Ludwig. I go to Bunny Carlos, I go to John Aldridge, I go to Rob Cook, and they fill in the details for me, even though I work there.
I like asking Rob questions, and he goes, it's in the book. Read the book.
Yeah. And
I put this all down so I didn't have to remember it,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's so cool to see that stuff. Anything else here you got that's you got some shirts? You're just selling a little everything.
I got show shirts, and some of these shirts over here were show shirts, and now a show shirt means that a staff that was doing the show, there was only like 5 staff members, so there'd be 5 shirts made. Well, I imagine NAMM show, 4 shirts. Frankfurt Fair, 3 shirts. PASIC, 2 shirts, 3 shirts, whatever. Every year you're getting this plethora of 10, 15 shirts.
And some of them may be worn by John Bermuda Schwartz.
There we go. But then and in the beginning we wore suits. But then add 10, 15 shirts times 30.
Yeah.
And so you have a buildup of all this stuff that you couldn't possibly wear.
Yeah. So you have the coolest yard sale of all time. Absolutely. Here is really what this is.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you gave us some time here.
But I even bring in, this is a Ludwig die-cast twin channel hoop. This was from the 70s and 80s. And frankly, I just found it at home. And originally I had it on a snare drum. And then I took it off the snare drum, and then I misplaced it. And I just found it this weekend. And so here it is, to hopefully try to sell, because they're very rare. You don't find them anymore.
Somebody might have came here just looking for just that. You never know, you know.
And even, I got this, this WFL Porto pad. And so being that it's branded WFL means that it was made somewhere between 1937 and 1955.
Wow.
And the fact that it's still going today, we got it here, is kind of a cool thing.
I was just telling it to someone, there's just so much history at the show, and it's so interconnected, and you can run into it's wild how much Chicago is just tied with almost the invention of the drum set and just this whole subsection. Yeah. It's this whole world that when you come here, you start to really learn about it.
This show is a little different than the others. This is very much a selling show too. People come here to do a lot of commerce. The other vintage shows, they're very good, but they're not all real strong commerce shows.
Yes,
okay, yeah. But when you go to a Pennsylvania drum show, there you see even older drums, because it's stuff coming out of the woodwork from that older world of Pennsylvania and Maryland and all those places, New Jersey.
Well, the Civil War, we talked to the Civil War guy, and he was saying that was where a lot of that stuff had came from.
It's like this particular show is where you pull out all I call them the working drums. Things that were actually being played and stuff, and so
they built rock and roll with these drums,
Kind of. Yeah.
One hit at a time.
So. That's right. That's the line that I used to use for Ludwig Supraphonics or Ludwig Black Beauties is something like, what did I say? 1,000 hits.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about striking the drum. We're talking about they created 1,000 hits.
Yeah, it's crazy when you really sit and think of some of these things were on all those vintage recordings. So it's
it's pretty much an incredible. I call it my E True Hollywood story that I got to go, become a drummer decide to be a drummer on February 1964.
Yeah.
You know, at that iconic event of Ringo playing on the Tonight Show or on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then, you know, studying drums, and then going to work for Ludwig. I mean, and then staying for all those years. Boy, that's a pretty special story just in itself.
Yeah.
And it's always been an honor to work for a legacy brand.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I would say is that I always felt so honored that in a way I was the first non-Ludwig family member to be given we'll call it the keys of responsibility to keep the brand going to the next generation. And now the next generation, you know, because I'm retired, they're taking on, they're doing even, you know, a better job.
It's just cool to see something like that goes so long. You know, you have these things in the drum world that just don't exist in the guitar world as much. We're like, you know, like the Zildjian family and some of these families where it goes back so long to like literally the roots of the instrument. And you had such a huge part of that. So it's so good that
I'd like to say that I was at Ludwig for 36 years and I retired in the 110th anniversary year.
Wow.
Okay, so if you divide 36 into 110, basically it's 1/3 of Ludwig's existence.
Wow.
And so that's so cool to know that I was in a position of responsibility for the brand for 1/3 of its existence.
So cool. Well, hey Jim, I appreciate you
Great.
taking the time to talk to me today.
Good seeing
Thank you.
you,
It's good seeing you.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.